we're going to be talking today about improving your reputation, or how to build a solid reputation within the apartment syndication industry. So we're talking, today about multifamily specifically, and all of you who are attending this webinar are interested in that, in multifamily, and how to either start your syndication business or grow it. And so we want to talk about one of the most important things and the fastest way to scale your apartment syndication business. We have been able to achieve tremendous success in the multifamily realm, faster than anyone that I am aware of in the space. And I don't say that to brag, but I do say that to point something out, and that we are very focused on our reputation. And I think that is one of the key factors in getting us to where we are, and building our portfolio to up over $1 billion assets under management, and beyond that. But early on, starting out, you're unknown. It's not kind of, you are unknown. Nobody knows about you. The brokers don't know about you. And you're trying to build reputation. You're trying to build a track record. And there are different ways that people go about business growth. Some are aggressive. Some think short term. Some do not play the long game. They burn bridges. They can be underhanded, and it's something that's very, very important when you start out to pay attention to your reputation, because this industry is very, very small. Everybody knows everybody eventually, no matter what level you're playing at. The players are limited, and you will have either a good or a bad reputation. So, we focused early on the reputation building, and being able to have the reputation of being direct, easy to work with, personable, and being able to execute. We do what we say, and we don't mess around. We've really rarely had to ever retrade a deal. We have had 2 so far that we've done so on in our history. One was right as COVID was coming out in the first year there in March. And so debt went crazy. And so we just had to, as did most anybody else who had a deal under contract at that point in time. It was just a matter of numbers. Nobody had underwritten that type of sensitivity in the debt. And so we were having to adjust the price there, and we're able to work that out. And then we just had one recently in a different asset class that we had to come back with a little bit of a retrade. But we typically try not to do that, because then you get a reputation for putting things under contract and not, and then a lot of people will go in and they'll put something under contract at a high price with the intention of retrading, and that reputation will precede you. And so people will be less inclined to award you deals, because they know that's your MO, and you're going to retrade as soon as you get it under contract. And so you got to be very, very careful. So improving your reputation always, through words and actions, and which one speaks louder. I think it's definitely actions. The old adage, actions speak louder than words, because you can say one thing, but what you do is really what people take away. And so you just need to make sure that you match. So whatever you say is what you're going to do. And then people know that they can bank on what you said. And that is important, especially when broker relations, because they are going to either go to bat for you or not go to bat for someone else when they're talking about awarding a deal. And if they're not able to trust you and trust what you say or your ability to execute, then they'll be less inclined to put their neck out there for your group, and talk these sellers into going with you or picking you. Now, obviously, a lot of that has to do with where you're at in pricing, so they're not disconnected. But all things being equal on price and terms, reputation is going to win you the deal 9 times out of 10. But also above and beyond that, it's going to get you more deals. Because people just like working with you. It's going to make a big difference on what they bring to the table and what they put on your plate. If you're hard to work with, they're going to be less inclined to bring you an off-market deal, because why would they choose you if you're a real pain in the rear? So that's a big part of it, is building that reputation with the brokers and making sure, again, so the first one is make sure that your actions match your words, because both are going to be what's left with the people you transact with. And on the seller side too, it's very important to do what is asked of you during the process, during the listing process. So if they ask for bids to be sent in by 5 o'clock on Thursday, a lot of people will wait to the last minute and they'll put in their bid maybe the next morning because they're trying to get a feel for pricing and where they need to come in at. That's okay if you want to do that, as long as you have guidance from the broker that will be fine. But we're careful even about that. So if the seller is requesting that you turn in bids at 5 o'clock on Thursday, then make sure you turn it in by 5 o'clock on Thursday, because our thought process is, and this is the way we look at it, if we're trying to choose a group and we have groups that can't even follow a simple instruction like that, how is it going to be working with them once we get under contract? Are they going to drag their feet? Are they going to not listen to instruction? So that's, a simple thing, but it's just those little actions that help you build that reputation with, doing what you say you're going to do and following instructions. One thing that everybody talks about is how to stand out in the crowd. And so there's a couple, first thing you're going to want to do is or first crowd you're wanting to stand out in is the broker crowd. So how do you get to that level? So it's kind of incremental. And this talks about reputation, but also about building your track record, because that is part of it. So, one thing that we have done, and that it's a good idea for you to do if you have not yet started or you're looking to start your syndication business, is to invest alongside of another operator at first on the LP only, just with your own money. You can get a feel for communication, how often it needs to be, how, what kind of things are being communicated, and how you feel about that as an investor. And then so when you become an operator and you have investors, you kind of have an understanding of what you like to see and what your investors are going to like to see. So having that experiential knowledge from an investor standpoint, investing as an LP on with another operator is the best way. That's like step one. And then step two, you invest with another operator as a co-GP and bringing some capital to the table. And so you're going to be working on the deal a little bit more, touring the deal and working on that aspect and having some quarterly meetings, but also bringing some capital to the table and being able to test your raising abilities with your network. That's going to build a little bit more track record. And then you can go start getting deals under your own name, and you can tout some of the deals that you've been involved in at that point. So you can talk about, some that you're invested on the LP, deals that you're invested in as a co-GP, and then now you're on your own, and here's how much money you've been able to raise. And so that all builds your reputation with the brokers. And if you come out at the beginning and you don't have any background in it, and you're, just trying to, well, we think we can raise money, friends and family or whatever, they've heard that a million times. The brokers, that is, have heard that a million times. And there are a lot of new groups out there right now. The market's very, very flooded. So being able to stand out in the crowd, that's the best way to do it. And then also, getting started, if you don't have the net worth and liquidity, you can bring in a co-GP, to kind of help you with that. And if that co-GP has a track record, you can tout that as well. And that'll help build your reputation with the brokers. And then once you get to that point and you're awarded a deal, that's the biggest, if I had to point to the most crucial moment in anyone's career as a multifamily syndicator, it's going to be when you're awarded the first deal. Because if you don't execute, you will be forever labeled that way with at least that broker. And if you do execute and you do it well, you'll be forever labeled that way with that broker. So it can go either way for you. And so it can be a nerve-wracking process, but you have to be confident in that. And again, don't, understand that brokers are people. They have families, they have goals, they want to make money as well. So make sure you treat them as such. You're going to have relationships with these brokers on the friend level, because you're going to interact on the business level with them. So you're going to get to know them and their families, and maybe go golfing or go out to eat or different things like that. Make sure that you are personable and that you are nice to deal with. We have been dealing with a seller on another transaction who is not that way. They are very just kind of, you've heard the expression, kiss the ring. It's like, I'm the guy and everybody's got to, bow down to me. And, and they're just really a jerk and just makes things very, very hard to deal with. And the brokers, are aware of that. And I'm telling you, it just doesn't work well. They think they're being Mr. Big Shot businessman and everything else, but it just hurts your reputation, and it's going to hurt your ability to get, especially off market deals, as I mentioned before. So be sure that you're personable, that you're friendly, and that you're honest, upright, and you do what you say. That's how you're going to stand out in the crowd, is doing that, is just following through with what you said. And then staying, or how to maintain your standing, is the next biggest step in this aspect. And that is, staying in front of the brokers. This is kind of broker relations, but kind of reputation. But once you get the deal under contract, being very responsive, like super, super responsive, is something that we really press. So you have to have a team that is very, very responsive. So if you are you got a legal team, or you have a tax team, or whatever the case, your underwriting team, whatever the case may be, they have to be as responsive as you are, or that's not going to work out. Because if you're waiting on your legal team to get you a PSA red line back, and it's taking a week, and you were trying to get it done in 3 days, or you have a 10-day deadline on the PSA negotiations, it makes you look bad. Because again, I'll go back to Jocko Willink, the extreme ownership. Ultimately, it's always your responsibility if things do not go correctly. So you can't blame it. Oh, well, it's my legal team's fault, or, oh, well, it's this. You have to take ownership of that. And so you need a team that's going to be as responsive as you need to be. So if you're having to, pull people along and getting responses and getting the information you need, then be sure to make a change. So, I will give a plug out for our group, Brownlee, Whitlow, and Prate. They do a fantastic job. I cannot sing their praises enough. It's absolutely mind-boggling, the amount of volume of work that they put out. We'll have contracts come in, or a PSA, purchase and sale agreement, come in on a deal. One standard procedure is they'll send you the PSA ahead of best and final, and they want you to make comments on that. Most people just say, oh, we're okay with this, we're good with this. We go ahead and have it redlined from our attorney, so that we're actually one step into the PSA negotiations, and they usually will turn that around for us within 24 hours. And it's just phenomenal. They're not always able to do that, but I mean, that's as fast as it can get. And they're working on multiple contracts and multiple asset classes for us right now, on hotel, storage, car wash, multifamily, you name it. They do our entity setup. So really phenomenal group, but they help us with our reputation, because anybody who you're associated with, it's going to affect your reputation. So make sure you're surrounding yourself with a really, really good team that has the same mindset as you, in order to keep that reputation sound. Negotiating the PSA, if you're able to negotiate in a way that is don't take too much of a hard line. So a lot of these things are just business decisions, like out-of-pocket expenses or damages. If the contract, let's say the seller defaults, or there's a problem with the phase one environmental, or title, or survey, or whatever the case may be, the out-of-pocket expenses, the cap on that. So that's always an object of controversy, is how much they're willing to cover if something goes wrong there. So those are things that you can give, or as concessions, and try to negotiate. You have to guard yourself, but you have to do so in a sense that people still want to do business with you. We have some people come in and it's like, this is our contract, and take it or leave it. This is it. I don't care what you think. And it's just not a good way to do business. Nobody wants to deal with people like that. So be as accommodating as possible, as is conducive to your business model. So you have to protect yourself. So we lean on our legal team to say, what do you think about this? Are we able to concede on this? And they'll say, well, that's just a business decision for you to make, or no, there's some legal ramifications if you don't leave that in there, and this is why. And then so you can come back and explain why that is the case. Always communicating well with the broker during due diligence. This is a big deal. providing information in a very timely manner. So when you get a deal under contract, you're going to start the due diligence, and you're going to be on site inspecting the unit. So you're going to immediately send them a list of everything you're going to need, all the documents. That's usually in the purchase and sale agreement under Schedule F in our case. Anything you're going to need, any kind of documentation, contracts, whatever, we send that to them. We send them a process, and then we send them a list of everybody who's going to be on site. We're going to need, let's say we're going to have 8 walkers looking at units, and for every 2 walkers on our side, we're going to need 1 walker from the seller side or from the management company side. So we'll have 2 of our people go with 1 of their person. And so they can open up a door on each side of the corridor, and 1 can go on one side, 1 can go on the other side, and we can knock out more that way. But we communicate all of that to the broker, who communicates to the seller and to the management company of the seller. So we can say, and then, if we're doing lease audits, if they're paper lease audits, we're in the office and we're going to say, okay, we're going to have 3 doing lease audits, and we're going to have 3 people outside doing amenities and exterior, and then we're going to have 8 people doing unit walks, and just communicate that, and then what time you're going to be there. And then we ask very pertinent questions like, are we able to interview the staff over there? And a lot of times the sellers do not want you to interview the staff until you're done with due diligence and all the money has gone hard. So that's the case with the deal we're working on right now. But the point of all this is to be mindful and courteous throughout this process. We had a group that was looking to buy a property from us, and they wanted to do some inspections. They thought they saw some water damage. So they went on the property and started tearing off siding without permission on our buildings. It was absolutely outrageous. And number one, I'll never, ever award them another deal. And we were very upset in the meantime, and that deal fell through because of it. So be mindful that that's someone else's property. You need permission to go there, and always communicate. Driving through the property is one thing, but still be very, very courteous and cautious not to tip off the staff if they haven't announced it, or whatever the case may be. Just be very, very careful of that, because you want to keep the sellers very, very happy and pleased with you, so that when they have another deal come out, they'll remember you from the last time and how easy you were to deal with. And it's a very good transaction, and they'll be more likely to award a deal to you next time. So it works both on the broker side and on the seller side. So that's another way to kind of keep standing out in the crowd. Once you get past due diligence, communicating, or during due diligence, communicating any issues. Let's say we're going to do a roll-up call. Roll-up call is where we've inspected the property, we've done all the lease audits. We're going to have what we call a roll-up call with the property management company, and they're going to discuss with us the different things that they found and say, okay, here's the leases. This is what we found. This many people have pets but didn't pay pet rent. This many people didn't have the correct deposit amounts down, or didn't match what they had in the account. So we're going to have that roll-up call, and then we're going to very quickly communicate to the broker, who's going to communicate to the seller any issues that we have, or anything that needs to be cured in that sense. But maybe we're missing some information, but we communicate very quickly. We don't wait to the last minute. Let's say, the day before due diligence ends, be like, oh, by the way, we need you to fix the pool because there's a hole in the bottom and it's draining, so whatever. That was a bit of an exaggeration, but you want to make sure that you communicate early and often during the due diligence process. Once you get past due diligence, you want to make sure that you're communicating well as far as where your closing time frame will come into play. We always build in an extension into our contracts with an option. So we'll usually put some additional earnest money deposit down to kind of quote unquote buy that extension. It goes towards the purchase price. So it's really, no money lost there. And we're from $50,000 to $100,000. We've gone upwards of $1 million for that extension. The reason we do that is because we are at the mercy of the lender. And if the lender for some reason delays and last minute, and it goes past like 1 day or 2 days past, and we need to extend, you need to have that option in there. And if you don't, then your reputation looks bad because you didn't prepare for it. And if as soon as we know that a lender is going to be delayed, we're going to go ahead and communicate that to the broker and let them know, hey, there's a problem here. They took or title is backed up, or survey's backed up, or phase one's backed up, which they all are right now. And so we're going to need to push closing by a week or so, and just make sure we communicate that. And we'll go ahead and wire the money in for the additional extension. So, all in good faith. And there's no issues there. So we've built in safety nets there to keep our reputation on track, because if I just lean wholly on a third party that's not associated with us, like say a lender, and something goes south, we can't just say, oh, well, it's the lender's fault. It really wasn't me. It is you. Extreme ownership. Remember, you have to take ownership for everything that goes wrong in a deal that you are the operator on. So be sure to build in some cushion there, so you don't tarnish your reputation and don't close on time and have a deal fall through. Worst case scenario with hard money, because you would like to think that everybody that you're transacting with is very reasonable, but you may find a seller who is not, and they could easily take your hard money if you don't hit the deadline. So you want to be very careful there. So I want to take a second, take a breath, and go. I see some questions popping up. Any questions that you want to ask me? It doesn't have to be necessarily about reputation. It can be about anything you want to ask me questions about. Hotel, car wash, storage. I don't know as much about storage, as our storage team does, but I'll do my best. But it's specifically related to reputation, some things that maybe you have questions about, or ways that you can help in your specific situation. So I want to go ahead and give time to that. You can put those in the Q&A box there on your screen. You can click on the Q&A and type your question in there. But I did see one question is, when do you ask for the list of due diligence docs, within the LOI or during the contract phase? We have a limited list within the LOI, but it's definitely not comprehensive. So the list of required docs, which we call Schedule F in our contracts, is spelled out in the PSA. We just say, you need to provide us very high level with so many years of historical data in the LOI. We keep that very high level, but it's very detailed inside of the PSA, because we're asking for very specific things. We need to know all the contracts, especially cable contracts. Is there a buyout option? Are we tied in? Can we have competitive companies on site? Different things like that you're going to need. Any contracts that must be assumed, any contracts that can be canceled. All of that information is listed out in our Schedule F, which is in the purchase and sale agreement. All right, great question. All right, everybody's kind of quiet today. Don't be bashful. Any questions? I just want to kind of open it up, because reputation is kind of one of those things that's very specific to your situation. But one thing that, I always, it's something that we push. A good name is better to be desired than much riches, is one phrase or scripture passage that I use. And it's not about getting money. It's about playing the long game and reputation, and not burning bridges, not getting. So if you don't get awarded a deal, and you thought you were going to get it, we have groups, and I mentioned this before, you have groups that will yell and scream and holler and, get mad at the brokers, and they're just doing their job. And that's not a good way to play the long game. And so be very careful about that. You can get emotional on deals, and you're very excited about getting a deal, and you think you're going to get it, and then the last minute somebody comes up $1 million and knocks you out, and you spent hours and hours of work on this, and it's very frustrating. You just have to kind of swallow that and push it down, and then just move on and go to the next one, because there's plenty more deals out there, and that one wasn't meant to be. So don't ruin something just over some emotion on one deal. So all right, guys and gals and everybody else on this webinar, please give me some questions. Otherwise we'll end early. So looking for any questions here. I know this is a little less technical of a webinar, but I was keeping it pretty simple today. I have my girls have a soccer game, and I have to travel about 2 hours. So I actually had to leave in about an hour or so to go watch that. So I was keeping it kind of short today. But I do want to make sure that we answer any questions that you have. One thing that I did as far as broker relations are concerned, and this has to do with reputation, is I went, and I've mentioned this also, is I went to all the brokers via text, via email, and I asked them, hey, what's the best way for me to build my reputation with you? And I let them answer those questions and let them tell me kind of what are the best the things that they look for in a group. And it's a lot of what I'm sharing with you now. Breaking into a new space, like let's talk about another asset class like car wash, brand new to the space. Nobody knows us. There's like, so how many car washes do you operate when we're buying our first ones? And they, we have to say none, but, we do operate businesses, and it's basically the same thing. But having to build that reputation with all the brokers there, so we're having to do the same thing. It's the same thing. This is what we do. We execute, we close deals. This is our portfolio. We're going to point to what we've done, our track record. We can give references, and all of that helps. So once you get that reputation built, you can leverage that reputation to build out your network of more and more contacts. So you can say, hey, talk to so-and-so. We've transacted with this group before. Why don't you ask them how they like working with us? And we have a one sheet that we send. Actually, I think it's turned into 2 sheets now, that we send with every LOI that has our team, acquisitions team, our managing partners, our portfolio, kind of, how many deals we've closed in the last year. And we send that with every LOI, just kind of just to bolster our group and build our reputation and our track record with whoever is selling the property. So it's been very successful for us. And it's specifically one is a couple of deals, just that one piece. So we have a question: what advice would you give someone who would like to develop a relationship with an experienced GP to become a co-GP? So this is a very important topic, and it's one that I've had with several people lately. I'm not a big proponent of Grant Cardone. He's very successful, but he's a little too brash for me, a little too in your face. That's his marketing strategy. It does well for him. I'm not a big fan, but he does say, if you can't get a seat at the table, then serve water at the table so you can be a part of that conversation. That's a loose paraphrase, but that's the basic concept here. If you're wanting to get into the game, you can try to provide value. So to a experienced GP, you're going to want to look for a experienced GP that's in the space that you're transacting. So if you're wanting to buy C class, then look for a co-GP that's buying C class. You're not going to want to go to a GP that is doing A class, because they're not really going to want to. The interests aren't going to be aligned. And if you're trying to build like your investor base and raise money, and they're buying A class, and you want to condition your investors for C class, that's really not going to be conducive to your growth plan. So you want to try to find a GP that is in the space that you're in, whether that's, C, B, A, whether it's development, whatever it is, make sure that they're in that space, and then try to provide value. And in that particular one, as far as being a co-GP, the value there is equity. And then also, but you can't just provide equity, because the SEC doesn't like that. So you have to be involved in the deal. You have to be a part of the deal. So you're going to have to provide value. You're going to have to tour the deal. You're going to have to, be on quarterly meetings. At least we recommend that. You're going to need to get legal advice from your counsel on what's the best way to avoid being in a broker dealer situation in that sense, but provide value to the experienced GP so that they want to bring you on. And that's going to be first, it's the same thing as broker or investor relations, that people have to know you, like you, and trust you. And they can't like you unless they know you. So first is to introduce yourself and build your network. Then interaction builds liking you, hopefully, and then after, they've been, and if they like you, they'll spend more time with you. And if they spend more time with you, then they'll learn to trust you. So that you've heard Dan talk about the investor triangle, the know, like, trust. It applies here as well. So great question there, Justin. Let's see. All right, we got some questions coming in. Dissatisfied limited partner. What resources do you allocate to resolve matters with a dissatisfied limited partner? Well, we have, so when we say resources, we're talking about personnel. But if you don't have a team, we have an investor relations team that's, they're phenomenal. So they are very hands-on, one-on-one with our investors. And so that's the resource that you need to allocate. Just put yourself in the investor's shoes. And that's why I recommend you invest first, then co-GP, and then go on your own, is because you need to understand, you need to put yourself in the shoes of the investor. We invest alongside every investor, so that we maintain that mutual interest, that alignment of interest. But just put yourself in their shoes, and how would you like to be communicated with? What is the issue? Is it simply because you didn't communicate something well to them? Is it that they're misunderstanding something, which goes back to you didn't communicate it well enough? And you could say, well, no, they're just not understanding. Again, extreme ownership. If they don't understand, it's because you didn't communicate it in a way that they understood. So it's ultimately your fault if they don't understand. And remember that, your investors are your lifeblood. That's how we're able to buy these beautiful properties, is our great group of qualified investors. And we want to make sure that we are doing our best. Now, you won't be able to please everybody. That's just not possible. But you need to be professional and courteous, and always maintain a reputation, because the reputation with your investors is equally, I'm not going to say more, because all reputation is important, but equally as important as broker relations and reputation and seller reputation. So whatever resources you have at hand or what you're going to need to allocate to that. If you're getting started, it's very, very difficult. It requires a team. And when I say team, like, the three managing partners at PassiveInvesting.com are myself, Dan Handford, and Danny Randazzo. We each played a role starting out. It was not just one of us. So Dan was investor relations. Danny was lender relations and debt underwriting, and I was broker relations and acquisitions. And so we split that up amongst the three of us. If you're doing it yourself, it's going to be very difficult to be able to do everything. And if you're just starting out and you're still working a job and you're trying to do that, it's nigh unto impossible. I don't want to discourage anybody, but what I'm trying to encourage you is to have a partner and to realize that you cannot do it all yourself. The book that I say all the time is Who Not How. So, add people under you. I try to find people that are smarter at things than I am. I don't want somebody working for me that is not better at something than I am. That's why I hired them, is so they can do the thing that I'm not that good at. And that takes a level of humility, and I'm fine with that. I am not good at spreadsheets. That's not my thing. I love playing with them. I love looking at the numbers. I know them back and forward, but data entry and analytics and doing all that's just not my thing. So we have a phenomenal analyst team that works on those and works on our models. And, so making sure you have a team in place so that you can allocate resources where you're good at. So if you're really good at investor relations, then you want to find somebody to handle underwriting or handle broker relations. You can focus on investors, or vice versa. Maybe you're not good at people skills and you're more of a tech person. You like the underwriting and you're not as good on that level. Maybe get somebody to do your investor relations for you. So it's always a way of allocating the resources that you don't have and building that team out. When competing with bids regarding price, what's the best approach? So it depends on the broker that you're dealing with. If you build a good enough relationship, they're going to guide you into a good position as much as is legal and fair to the other buyers. Some are very direct and you'll get a where you need to be price. Some are not, and they'll give you a ballpark and they'll don't leave anything on the table, and every single broker since the history of time, I think, and since and on every single deal in every asset class, they're like, don't leave anything in the tank. There's not going to be another round, and always there's going to be another round. There's always a third round. Always. And just because they're guiding you into the position doesn't mean in the end of the day, the price is going to win it if all things are created equal. So we had a deal that we were working on for months and months, and even the seller said, we'd like you to get the deal. But somebody came in higher and it went to them after we had spent a lot of time on that deal. And, it's just the way it goes. So you're not guaranteed anything. But we always call the brokers and ask for pricing guidance. Okay, when you came, you said $250 a door starting. Are we still there? And they'll say, well, it's shifted a little bit. Maybe, if you come in at maybe $240 a door, I'll get you in the best and final. That's a good strategy. When you get into best and final, sometimes they can't give you quite so detailed guidance, but they say, well, you're not leading, but you're not far behind the lead, and, give you a range. Obviously they're not going to tell you who's leading or who the other groups are, but that, that's why you want that relationship, because you want to be able to get that information from the brokers. So right now we're in a time period when prices are shifting. So we just came out of a time period where prices were shifting, but they were shifting up. So properties sold for much, much higher than guidance was. We had, properties going 10 million over guidance, 10 million. Yes, it's insane because the inflation and the low rates were driving prices up. And so the brokers had done the brokers opinion of values, or the BOVs, a couple months ago. And so by the time they came out, their guidance was this, and then the deals just ran way past. And so they were very successful without, necessarily doing anything. But now we're in the opposite trend. So rates are going up. BOVs were done in that high point. And so people are really confident in the prices they can get. However, debt has compressed the market. So, cap rates are stabilized right now. They're in the mid threes pretty much across the board, but we are seeing them trend a little bit back towards 4. We just were looking at a deal this morning that was 3.89, which is really good. I know it sounds weird saying when 2 years ago we were talking about 5s and 6s. But so what my point was, deals are going to come out with guidance, and then I think you're going to see them pull back. We've seen 2 or 3 deals within the last week come back to us that we put in an offer that was below guidance, and it ended up being where everybody else came in. So the market is going to speak for itself. Interest rates are interest rates. And some of these deals are going to get awarded to people who did not correctly underwrite interest rates, and they're going to get close to financing and find out they can't get what they underwrote for. They didn't have enough sensitivity, and they're either going to lose the deal, they're going to lose money on the deal. So we're kind of keeping an eye on some of those deals that I didn't think people underwrote correctly. So they're underwriting a 3.5 and we're underwriting a 4.5. You're going to have some problems when you have a point more expensive debt than what we underwrote. Great question there. All right, let me look here. All right, I'm going to take a couple more. All right, and yeah, that's looks like pretty much all the questions. And Bruno, if you want to email me directly, that's fine. And anybody else, if you have any further questions, outside of this, Brandon@passiveinvesting.com is my email address. You can reach out. I'll do my best to get with you. This is a very busy time period right now. I'm trying to grow, like I mentioned, some other business lines, and that's kind of my role right now. Is when we're getting into a new asset class, is build out the acquisitions team. And so I'm going to be adding some team members. We have some job postings out there. So anybody in this network that knows somebody who wants to be on a phenomenal team and wants to learn the workings of passiveinvesting.com, please be sure to check out our listings. I believe they're on Select Leader. So we have several of those out right now. So I do want to mention that. But thank you all for joining me. I do want to look and see where, okay, we got our next webinar coming up, and I want to make sure you got that bullet point. So we're going to be talking, you're going to be hearing from Dan Handford next week on the importance of understanding cap rates and apartment syndication. That's always a great discussion. I love cap rate discussions. There's so much you can do there. with cap rates, and it's a crucial part of multifamily, and having your finger on the pulse of where cap rates are. So be sure to tune in next week. Dan's going to be talking about what is a cap rate and how is it calculated. Should you buy in a high or low cap rate market, and why? What are blue chip corporations and why are they significant to cap rates? The power of the cap rate and so much more. And I've heard a lot of this material. Obviously, we talk about this all the time, so you'll not be disappointed. So be sure to tune in next week for Dan Handford and our Multifamily Investor Nation weekly webinar. And again, thanks for joining me, Brandon Abbott, today. And I hope everybody has a great and productive day. We'll see you next time.